Hey, it's the Algebra Teacher Powers to BI with a quick little blog this week video to show you how you can pull in some data from a website and take a few little shortcuts. If you've ever been frustrated with the tables that have been provided to you, this is for you. So with the start of the NFL season coming up, we are definitely going to be having some of our fantasy players looking at stats. And so one place to go get your stats is just the NFL.com player stats. So that's all. I'm at this website, NFL.com stats, player stats. What I want to do is not all these stats are going to be important for us when we're trying to make our decisions for our fantasy football teams. But I still want to be able to access this data on an up-to-the-minute basis or as quickly as NFL updates their stats. So what we're going to do here to make this data connection, I'm going to copy this out. So I've copied out the website right here. And we're going to go into Power BI, and we're going to go to Get Data. We're going to go to Web, and we're just going to paste in that web address. And so if you've ever done this before, one of the things that you know that you can do is going to pull in some of the tables that have just been, that Power BI sees in the background of things that they're saying, hey, maybe you want this, maybe you want that. And we can preview what gets pulled up once it makes this connection here. But what I've seen in the past is that some clients don't like everything that's being brought in. So we can go into the Power Query Editor, we can make some changes, we can do some transforms, but sometimes it's a little bit easier just to do it here in this little navigation window. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So aggregated player statistics. This looks pretty much like what we're seeing on that website. So let me pull up that website again. So it looks a lot like it, except I don't see the player image here. But other than that, it's looking pretty good. So again, we could easily pull all this in and start making some transforms. But something that not a lot of people use, that I know of, that I've talked to other Power BI users, is this add table using examples, which is in the bottom left here. So that's what I'm going to showcase today. So add table using examples. So here's what's going to happen. When we click on this, we're going to see the web view of what we were just at. And so this is pulling up that web page that we were looking at, and it looks a little funky right now because we see all these images right here. And it depends on what web page you're pulling in. Some are more user-friendly than others. It just depends on the HTML code. But let's just say the first thing that we would want to see is we're going to analyze and figure out who we're going to put in for our fantasy team is obviously we're going to want the name. So right here I see Jameis Winston. So under column 1, I'm going to double click in, and I'm going to start typing in Jameis Winston. So as I do that, it's saying here are the few things that we can pull back. So I'm going to pull in Jameis Winston. I'm going to hit enter, and then nothing else has happened. So we go, okay, and if you've ever done add column from examples in the Power Query Editor, this is kind of following along those same rules that we go by. So we're going to put in the next thing that would be under Jameis Winston, which we see here is Dak Prescott. So maybe if we give it Dak Prescott, it will figure out what we're looking for. So Dak Prescott, so I'm just going to hit the down arrow, highlight it, hit enter one more time, and Power BI figures out, okay, you're wanting just the names of the players. Cool, we got it. So I'm going to call column 1. I'm just going to rename it here, and I could have done this in the Power Query Editor, but might as well just do it now. This is the player name. All right, so the next thing that I like to know maybe for my fantasy football team is the yards they get per attempt, because that might be pretty important. So I'm going to come over here to my next column and start typing in what I want to see. So if we take a look, Jameis Winston has 8.2 yards per attempt. So I'm going to go 8.2, hit enter, and ooh, this one was much better. It started figuring it out because we've already given it one column, so it's starting to do a little bit of magic in the background. So Jameis 8.2, Dak 8.2. Let's make sure that matches up. Jared behind all these images looks like a 7.4. Looks good. All right. So we're going to rename column 1 to yards. And I'm going to be really specific here. Yards per attempt. Well, spell that right. Okay. Now, the next thing that's really important in fantasy football are the touchdowns. So I don't care let's say my fantasy league doesn't care about completions or the completion percentage, but the number of touchdowns they get. So I'm going to come over here and start typing in touchdowns for my first row. So Jameis has 33. So I'm going to type in 33 and hit enter. And let's see if it picks up the rest. So Dak 30, let's see. Looks good to me. Now, apart from touchdowns, so I'll rename this to touchdowns. Let me move this out of the way here. Interceptions are pretty important as well because they lose points in a lot of fantasy leagues. So I'm going to go interceptions, which Jameis was at 30. So I'm going to come in here, double-clicked, put in 30, and we see 11 next for Prescott. So let's make sure. Okay, it's looking pretty good. The last thing we might want to do is get the quarterback rating here, which can kind of just give you kind of that overall factor of how they've been doing over the last few weeks. So I'm going to rename this last one to interceptions. And finally, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so I can get some more space. Let's put in their interceptions we got. So let's put in the quarterback rating. So I'm going to put in 84.3 was for, and if we see, it's automatically filtering this down for us. I could hit enter, or I could double click on this, then hit enter. 99.7, all right. And now I can go with QB, because these are all quarterbacks, QB rating, and hit enter. And I'm done. Maybe this is, I don't want any of this other stuff here, so now these are the only things that are important to me to look at. Now, the only other thing that you can do, if you notice, when I was typing in Jameis Winston, see how we've got all these pictures in the background? So for some websites, it's really nice where you can pull back the images that are actually on the website. So we could actually pull back the image of Jameis, Dak, Jared, etc., etc. And let's find, is my quarterback in here? There we go. There we go. Right here, Mr. Gardner Minshew. All right, so that's who I'd want up front, but we will see this year how he does. Okay, so anyways, side note. Coming back over, let's see if I want to pull back their images. So I'm going to come back over to the final part over here. And if I start typing in Jameis again, I've got this right here, this web link, players, Jameis Winston. So I'm going to double click on it and going to hit enter. Let's see if it pulls up the rest of them. It doesn't. So the next one I think was Dak Prescott. So we go Dak Prescott. Hit enter. And now we've got all of their images. Now, I will tell you, for this website, it's not the best because they've all the web addresses for each of these figures is it's not just HTTPS than this, but like a lot of the public web addresses, like especially on Wikipedia, all we would have to do is add an HTTPS in front of this, and then it pulls back that image in the Power BI report. Unfortunately, for NFL.com, their website is not set up that way, but I wanted to show you how you could do that. So we'll just call that player image, even though we're not really going to use that. But that is something that you can try to trick later on in one of your other websites if you're reaching out and getting data from it. Okay, so now what do we do? Well, now what we do is we hit OK. We picked out what we wanted. We didn't just bring in a full table. I could go to transform data. You know what? I'm going to do that. Just in case you pulled an image from another website, a lot of times when you do, especially from Wikipedia, what happens is that this website over here does not put in the full web address. So just for an extra little nugget in this video here, let's go with how we can add in a custom column. So up here in your Power Query Editor, I'm going to go into, because this would not take me to the actual web address, obviously. So what we have to do is I'm going to come over here to Add Column. I'm going to click on Custom Column, which is then going to give me my custom column. And I'm going to call this the image link. And what was technically missing, hopefully from most normal websites, what was missing is the HTTPS with the extra / in front of it. So I'm going to hard code that in. So HTTPS with that extra / going to concatenate, which means we're going to smush together whatever else I bring in, and I'm going to bring in that column, which was player image. I'm going to click player image, insert, no syntax errors. Let's click OK, see if it worked, and we've got it rolling. So where I've seen this used a lot is like for other images that go like with geographical information like state flags, for MLB team logos and stuff. But unfortunately for NFL, if you click on this, it doesn't just take you right to that image. But instead of doing MLB and other things, I thought since we're close to the NFL starting, hopefully soon, I went with this one. And then I would change this over to a text. And then we would just categorize this as an image URL once we get into the report, which we'll do in just a second. All right, so and now I don't need this player image anymore because it's technically what I would refer to if I wanted to pull back that image. So if I'm going to show best practices, I'm going to click remove because we never want to load extra columns that we don't need. All right, so now I'm going to go to home, going to close and apply this. And let's say, well, how would you use this? So at this point, I've really shown everything that you need to know about how to add a table from the web using an example. But if I have any extra fantasy football players in here, one thing that I was thinking that you could do, the ones that finally loads all this data, is one of the big things is touchdowns versus interceptions. Because usually in most fantasy football leagues, at least the ones I play in, I get 6 points per touchdown, and I get 2 points taken away when an interception happens. So, and if I come over here, what I would do is I'm thinking that I would put in a clustered column chart right over here. So clustered column chart, and I'm going to add in the player name to it. So I'm going to have this take up the whole page here. So the player name is going to be in here, but we need to put some values with it. So I want to see the touchdowns that each player has. All right, so we see this is being sorted by touchdowns. Lamar Jackson has the most, and this was for last season. And then I'd also want to put in the interceptions. So now I'm looking at this, and I can say, woo, lots of touchdowns for this guy, but interceptions, not so much, which is probably why he is still not on a team at this point in time, unless there's been an update at some point today. So this would help me out making my decisions. And what we can do is if we publish this out to the service, or if we even just kept this as a regular PBI desktop file, not publish it out, anytime that we wake up on a Wednesday morning or Thursday or whatever, and I click on refresh the data, this whole visual right now is going to be refreshed for me. So whatever are the important stats that I really wanted to know and make decisions about, I don't have to go out to NFL.com/stats anymore. It goes out, makes that connection, does the transforms that I want, and gives me the information that I need. And this, your visuals, you would tailor towards what is really important to your actual NFL fantasy football league. And if we go out here, this is just quarterbacks. So, I could call this the QB selection for the week. All right. And then if we go back out to that NFL.com website, if I go up, I was just on passing, which is obviously quarterbacks. If I went into rushing, now I could talk about my running backs. I could go through that exact same thing again and pick what stats are the most important to me and use that add table from examples feature. So, showed you how add table from examples works using Power BI Desktop. Use some fantasy football in there. If it doesn't apply to you, hopefully this applies to something else that you might use in your day-to-day basis. I hope this was helpful.